So this story is called Big Cheese Make Me, and how many of you guys listened to popular music between 1985 and 1990? Because that popular music sucked. And if you lived in Seattle, it was even worse because there was only about 5 stations to listen to, and you would think that Led Zeppelin was the newest band in the universe if you listened to rock radio in Seattle during that time. And I was a graduate of Auburn High School in Auburn, Washington, and although that place was a bit of a hick town, it had a strange punk rock kind of strain in it. And we got in trouble at the school dances for playing the Dead Kennedys' Too Drunk to Fuck, and for doing the Hey Get Laid to Moni Moni by Billy Idol. Some of you might, I don't even know where that comes from. There was like a whole article in Salon about it, like it was nationwide or something. And so we had this thing where we were just turned on by Repo Man and the Repo Man soundtrack, and we had a really cool record store called Hunters and Collectors that turned us on to Robin Hitchcock and all the kinds of music that you'd want to know about in the 80s. But you know, we couldn't find that on the dial anywhere, and only KCMU was playing it some of the time back when it was a freeform station, and we didn't get it very well down in Auburn. So we'd be trying to tune our truck radios to see if we could hear KCMU, and we might hear an hour of The Fall and not understand what that was about at all. But I ended up going to Green River Community College, which is there in Auburn, Washington. And they had a radio station there called KGRG. And it too, 100 watts of mono power was their slogan. And they were also stuck in the same 1970s rock time warp. So I started to hatch a plan. I'm like, if I can only stage a coup at this radio station, I can finally have a radio station to listen to near my home in Auburn, Washington that plays the music I like, more or less. So I happened to stage that coup one summer when no one else was around. I told one of the DJs, I'm like, play that Whitesnake album this one last time because it's gone after this. And she played Slide It In, and I took that record out to the back of that portable and I hucked it at a tree and it was gone. And then I went through and methodically removed anything that looked like Jodie Watley, or Taylor Dane, or Rush, or Yes, or The Doors. And I put in the REM records, the Gang of Four records I could find in the back that didn't put on the shelf of weirdo music. And then I also took a big heaping hunk of local rock music that I had acquired at Hunters and Collectors Records and Tapes, including the Screaming Trees and all the bands that were coming up, Mudhoney and all that, all of those bands. And I had a local show called Local Motion, and I went by my middle name. I was Stormin' Norman. So I would play all these bands on the radio, but then I also was successful at getting a hold of the school's budget to have concerts. So in 1987, it was really awesome to bring the Young Fresh Fellows down from Seattle to play in Auburn. And we brought the Mighty Squirrels. Do you guys know some of these guys, right? The Squirrels, the Young Fresh Fellows, the Dharma Bums, bands like that would come down and play. And there was a girl who was from Seattle who'd come down to Green River Community College specifically because I had told them that if we played cool music, we would get cool students, and I was right. And so this girl drove all the way down from Seattle every day to hang out at the radio station. Her name was Homney Hubbard, and I want to give her good credit for this. She was a writer for Backlash magazine. So there were 2 major music magazines in the late 80s. One was The Rocket, you guys might remember that. And the other one was Backlash, which was an alternative to The Rocket, which was apparently edgier, but just was actually more amateurish than The Rocket. And in those days, we didn't have the internet. So you only knew if bands were cool if someone told you, if Backlash said something about it, or you got a photocopied fanzine that someone had made that told you who you were supposed to like. And Hanley came and she says, hey, I understand that you have this budget. How would you like to book a band called Skin Yard? And I said, yeah, I want to book this band, Skin Yard. They were more metal than grunge. They were kind of ahead of the curve. And she said, I'm also friends with this other band that are friends with Skin Yard, and they're called Nirvana. You probably haven't heard of them. And I'm like, no, I haven't. And she says, well, I have this 7-inch, and she had a copy of the Sub Pop Single of the Month, #1, Love Buzz by Nirvana. And she handed it to me, and I put that on the turntable at the radio station. And I said, let's book these guys. And I said, do you think that they would play for $200 each? And they, of course, normally they were used to getting $45 to split 4 ways. So they were super glad to come down. So she made all the arrangements, and she took care of everything, and I made up the contracts. And I sent the contracts with her, and she had Jack and Dino sign one, and Kurt Cobain signed the other one, and probably someone's stolen that and tried to sell it on eBay already from the archives of the college, but we'll see. And maybe now someone will go find it. So I had to get a check, though, because it was a school. And I knew that bands would prefer to have cash. However, when you go to the AP and AR department and you say, could you give me $200 petty cash to give to a band, they would laugh in your face. So I had to call Kurt Cobain's house in Olympia because the only existing spelling of his name in 1989 was Kurtkobain. So I didn't know what was the C and what was the K in his name. So I'm calling his house. And his answering machine is just his phone held up to a TV set playing an infomercial for a minute and a half. I leave these messages, and you know, I was a pretty cool guy, but this guy made me feel like a tool so fast. Hi, my name is Tim Thomas. I'm calling from Greenberg Community College, and I just need to know how to spell your name because I don't know how to spell it exactly. All I have is this 7-inch single from you know. But it was long distance to call, and that guy was fucking broke. So he would never call me back. So fortunately, I had the fanzines, and I'd known that they brought in a second guitarist, and his name was Jason Everman. And this is a story about hang time, by the way, so thank you, Cole, for this setup for this. So I knew how to spell Jason Everman's name because he had never had his name misspelled on the back of a record. So I went and I convinced the accounting department they should cut me a second safety check to Jason Everman. So the night of the concert, it is crazy. And anything that happened with Nirvana afterwards, you could have seen it in the Lindblom Student Center. It's on YouTube, by the way, so if you don't believe my story, you'll see me in my 1989 acid wash tight Levi's, back announcing Nirvana and forward announcing Skinyard. They came and the place was sold out. It was packed. Kids came from every fucking where. Everywhere to come to Auburn, out into the woods to see this band play, and they set up a big banner in the back that was Elvis, and they had cut his eyes out and put a 666 on his forehead and scrawled Nirvana across it. And they all had super long ass hair, and they were wearing paisley shirts they got at the Aberdeen Goodwill because that's what counted as cool back in those days. And they kicked ass. It was crazy. There was moshing. There was body surfing. The school officials were coming to me going, what the fuck is going on? And when they had shown up, I had this contract because, you know, you had to sign these contracts. These guys were rock and rollers. The contract says there will be no drinking on campus. So what do? Nirvana shows up. They each have a half case of beer in their hand, walking straight in. So I had to go in there. Like I said, they made me into tools. I had to be like, hey guys, you're really not supposed to drink here on campus. You think you can put the beers away? And all they did was look at me, and then they gestured to the full room, and they go, Kurt Cobain says, do you think we should just go now? Do you want to not play or something? So they totally kick ass. They get to the end of the night. Skinyard plays, and then they're ready to come get paid. So Kurt Cobain walks up to me, and he's like, yeah, man, do you think that I can get paid now? And he has hair down to his ass, and his paisley shirt, and I'm like, hey, Kurt Cobain, I really want to pay you. And of course, it never occurred to me that this would be a problem coming from a suburban, upper middle class family, slumming it at the community college, but I'm like, all I have for you is this check. And I had to make it out. I handed it to him, and he's holding it. And I said, I had to make it out to the only spelling that you gave me, or didn't give me, Kurtkobain. And he looks at this check, and then he looks at me with these pleading eyes. And I go, I don't know, maybe you can go to the bank, maybe they'll cash it for you. It never occurred to me that guy was so poor he never even had a bank account, right? He had nowhere to go. And he just says, I don't think I can do anything with this man. And I'm like, oh. well, you're in luck, because I have this second check, and it's made out to Jason Everman. And he goes, oh. I go, do you want to go get him? He's like, yeah. So he goes and gets Jason Everman, the second guitarist. Well, here's the story. Jason Everman only played in Nirvana for about 3 months, and his name is on Bleach, the Nirvana debut album, because he was the guy with the $616.18 that it cost to record that album, which they borrowed from him with the promise of paying him back. So Jason Everman walks up, and I'm like, here, you need to sign for this check. And he's like, oh, wow, thanks, man. And he signs it, and I can see Kurt Cobain skulking in the background, just like, ugh. And he takes that check. And I always thought it was the weirdest thing. I didn't understand what had happened. Well, in 2011, I'm performing at the Lava Lounge for a benefit for my friend, Miss Anita Goodman. And there's a guy hanging out front smoking a cigarette, and his name is Justin Everman, Jason's brother. So I said, hey Justin, I have this question. Let me tell you this story about Kurt Cobain and your brother. And I tell him the story, and he gets to the end, he says, man, this is just like Paul Harvey. You ready for the rest of it? And I was like, yeah, tell me the rest of the story. And he says, those junkie assholes never paid my brother a cent for that record. They lied and they lied. And the only money that he ever got for Bleach was that $200 on that check that you cut as a safety check for that guy. So I just want to say that although I'm obscure, I had an important piece of rock history. And I can't be held responsible for anything that happened after that. Thank you very much.